YouTube question from Josu. Brandon Aiyuk got that dog in him? All I see is Devontae Adams.
Oof, 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 oof.
So the question is, are we here to stop the Brandon Aiyuk hype, or are we here to add to it? I think you and I both subscribe to the theory that when everybody else zigs, you should zag. But zigging right now when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk means not saying he looks great because he is everybody's sleeper candidate for breakout player. And we've been to practice 3 days in a row. Every day he looks fantastic. I think he's the standout player. People have said Travarius Ward is the best looking player. He didn't practice Tuesday. Nick Bosa is the best looking player. We could debate it, but there is no question that Brandon Aiyuk is in that conversation, and that's what it looked like again on Wednesday. Jimmy Ward, after practice, said, quote, he's having the best camp out of everybody on the team, well, besides Bosa. BA has taken his game to another level. It's crazy, honestly.
It's funny. Bosa just gets put in like the Tiger Woods LeBron category. It's like, yeah, he's just the best guy. But you know how we do like non-quarterback, non-Nick Bosa, and even Trent Williams. Like it's a unique team that way. The one thing I would say, and I know you, and I'm not saying I don't like him as much as you, but there's the excitement out there is enormous. Debo is an elite player, and practice for every player is not the same. Brandon, like if you didn't know Trent Williams was the best left tackle, you wouldn't really notice him beside his size at practice.
Right.
And even at moments now, like they're clearly, I think, putting Kittle on a little different of a plan because he's practiced so hard over the years. Like you wouldn't know that, like, yeah, they have one of the best tight ends in the league too. Aiyuk is practicing like Kittle would have 3 years ago. And part of it is he works all over the field. He goes deep. It really stands out. Like, to me, Debo had 2 moments yesterday. The play with Jimmy when he hit him and another deep bomb where it's like, I know he's elite. Like, I've seen it. He's one of the best players in the league. And I'm not trying to diminish Aiyuk, but I think Aiyuk's like, is Aiyuk the best? It's like people are just kind of saying this. Well, Debo is not, like, he ain't going to break Alshire's tackle in practice. So it's hard to truly quantify. And I'd even say George a little like that too. Like at any moment, George could have an 8-catch, 140-yard, 3-touchdown game, right? Now, I do think Brandon, one thing that's really standing out is his skill set. Like when you can do that, you and I saw Amari Cooper's career from the jump. And I think it's pretty clear he's probably underachieved overall, but he underachieved relative to who? Like the rest of the league, he's been dramatically better than, what do you think, 95% of wide receivers over his career? Like because his floor, when you can run routes and you just are that talented, your floor is so high. And it's like Amari, like, pissed the Cowboys off. You look, he had like 90 catches, 7 touchdowns, or whatever last year, or whatever it was. I mean, missed some games. I think it was like 70 catches because he missed 3 or 4 games with the COVID. But you watch him, you go, yeah, he can at any moment 5 catches and a half, right? And to me, Aiyuk is just completely raising his floor because we saw it over his 2-year career, even through the doghouse and his rookie year. We've definitely seen some moments where, like, holy shit, this guy, I mean, he's had walk-off touchdowns in the NFL. He's had enormous moments in enormous games. Now it's just like, is every game, are you getting a floor of a guy that you close your eyes and you're getting 75, 1,006 just minimum to start? Because that's what, and that's this first step. Like ultimately, Devontae, before he came Devontae, he just rose his floor so high. And then once you just keep rising it. And then if your quarterback's good, you can hit a ceiling, And part of what he's going to have going for him, and this really speaks to what's crazy about what you would say Devontae the last couple of years, like who else were the DBs worried about? Like when you have Debo, it's not like, well, let's say Aiyuk's going off, move Jalen Ramsey on Aiyuk, then who's covering Debo? That is the benefit of having 2 sweet dudes. But I think in all this hype, and he's earned it because he's killing it. When we talked about him yesterday in the fight, we hadn't seen his quote yet to Mooch on the fight about how the reason they fought, not because Fred was annoying him or whatever, at least according to him, it was simply because we were getting punked for a little while on defense. The defense was punking us for a couple days. And like we talked about him being the alpha, he didn't admit to being the alpha, but he's like, I had to fucking basically like I had to do something. Like something had to change, and I had to get it going for us. And it makes a little sense now, right? Because when Fred lit him up, it was just like these guys are demolishing their offense from the passing standpoint. And that was sweet. That was a sweet quote. Now I don't know. He just posted something on Instagram like, has Fred been treating him like a rookie? Who knows? There might be more to it. I think it's fair to say the way he attacked Fred, there's a little more to it than just like we were getting shoved around. Like Fred might have been annoying the shit out of him for 2 weeks.
Well, Fred, by the way, doesn't want to back down. The first snap of 11-on-11, it started with Fred Warner just yapping.
Yeah. But ultimately, like, could this guy have a career where could he be a true one day? When you give a shit, and it surely looks like he does, and you have the talent, one thing I've learned, you never put like anchors on people. You never put limits on people in terms of a scout or projecting players. Because when you do, and you can't like, remember, it's like how good Clay's going to be. Well, he's addicted to basketball. He's going to be a superstar, right? Like looking back, remember, because you didn't quite understand how much it meant to him, and just watching how much it kind of feels like it means to him. Again, just now, he's only third year in. This is the first year where he's kind of breaking out. It feels like you never truly know, right? You got it, because sustaining that love is like you just takes time. I don't blame anyone for being bullish, but I do think we're kind of overlooking how unreal 19 is.
You're 100% right. Debo's game translates better to games than to practice, whereas Aiyuk's, I think, goes both ways. But if you make spectacular catches and you get open down the field, then you're just going to make more plays in practice. Doesn't mean you look better, but I think if Aiyuk was 2 inches taller, you'd have no reservations about saying this can be wide receiver 1, right? That's the only thing I think now in his game, because he's fast enough, right?
I think his play speed's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's tough. He goes over the middle. I think the thing that's really stood out watching
ball skills are elite.
His ball skills. That is the thing. He can get open, but he consistently is making contested catches and catches where if he was 2 inches taller, maybe he wouldn't have to go as high to get them. I think it's clear that there was some trust with Trey, that Trey thinks I can put it up there. Not quite like, like Montana to Dwight, like I'm going to throw it only where Dwight can catch it or it's going out of the back of the end zone. I think Trey throws some balls that it's just like it's up there. Either Brandon's catching it or no one's catching it. Irony is if you do it over the middle of the field, it doesn't quite work that way. But Aiyuk makes those plays. Aiyuk consistently 3 or 4 times a practice is making catches where he has to climb the ladder, go up and get it with his fingertips, still bring it down with a defender right there. And those situations in a practice feel the most like things that happen in the game. Whereas Debo's practice situations are not anywhere close to what happens in a game. But I do wonder if Brandon Aiyuk's skills will benefit more from Trey Lance than Debo's will. Not that Debo won't be the same guy, but is there any part of Debo's game that hasn't been utilized with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Like, do you want to get on the ball in space more? Yeah, but he's really not a down the sideline, over the shoulder defender right there, pass catcher. Whereas Aiyuk can do a lot of that stuff and we haven't really seen it. So I think he stands to have a little bit more of a jump just because Trey's skills benefit him in a way. Jimmy he does stuff that Jimmy didn't do that really falls into Aiyuk's kind of skill set.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think I am so excited to watch this offense. Now, I think that's the area that going to put an immense amount of pressure on the quarterback, because we're all like, well, I know you're inheriting a superstar wide receiver. You got this other guy that everyone would bet the house on being sweet in 11, and we know how good Kittle is. And you got Juszczyk. And I just know you could Orlando Gary to Orlandis Gary to Mike Anderson.
Mike Anderson. Wasn't Mike Anderson in the military?
Yeah, to Elijah Mitchell. Like you have nothing but faith in the 49ers running back. So it's like when the only question is like the left guard, it is I would say it's a better situation than Patrick Mahomes inherited because I think there were still questions on some of his tackles. Eric Fisher, right? Maybe they had just signed Jeff's brother, Mitchell. I mean, that was a pretty good situation too, but this is it just doesn't get much better. Tyreek, it's still pretty early in Tyreek. I feel like Tyreek became Tyreek with Mahomes, but maybe I'm underestimating it. He definitely had some moments with Alex. But man, it doesn't get much better, guy. Part of some of the great Harbaugh teams, what would they have done for these wide receivers? Remember, it was like Crabtree and like Randy Moss. It was like Ted Ginn. The receivers were not very good. Juwan Jennings.
They had Vernon Davis, who was
true. But they have Kittle, they have a tight end too. The receivers, like those two wide receivers.
Yeah,
like Crabtree wasn't as good with the Niners to me as even Aiyuk can be. Like Aiyuk's just quicker, and you and I are Michael Crabtree guys. Like the Crabtree that we saw in Oakland turned out like this guy was a very, very good player, but he was slower.
Came back. He had the Achilles injury. Remember?
True, and he was never that fast. Remember, refused to run before the combine.
Michael, multiple people on the stream have asked, how is Danny Gray progressing? We thought he had a good day yesterday. Didn't do as much today. Juwan Jennings is not, to be honest, I wouldn't say he's been great. I don't know if it's been bad necessarily. It's so hard to know sometimes in practice, given all the different responsibilities. But if we're judging it just on drops or catches, had a couple drops today. I don't know if you would there was a ball on a fade. I wouldn't call that a drop, right? It was a very difficult play. I'm not.
Is that the one that Ambry picked off?
No, I am counting that. There was a ball on a fade that kind of hit his hands, but it was too high. But there was a 50-50 ball that Ambry Thomas took away from him.
Do you think it looks when you're next to those two guys and Aiyuk's having the camp of all camps and Debo's just a stud, that every drop feels like two drops when you're the third guy? Or it would feel bad if it was just a normal guys? Because I do think it stands out a little bit when you're kind of judged against those other guys.
I think it stands out with Juwan Jennings just because the whole offseason we've spent in Sharpie being like clear number 3 wide receiver.
And he earned it, right? How he finished last year. You and I went to OTAs. He looked sweet.
Difficult situations, yeah. He had a drop yesterday on a deep ball. Had a drop in like the drill where you run, where you turn your back to the pass thrower, you turn around, you run at him, do that thing. He and Danny Gray actually had back-to-back drops in that drill. So I don't think it's been great from that perspective, but he did cut his teeth in really difficult situations. But I thought a couple concentration drops, and then we do have to give DB's credit, right? Ambry Thomas on a 50-50 ball. He made the play.
One of those guys that rip it out of his hands.
And you gave Emmanuel Mosley credit on a deep ball that Trey Lance threw today to Debo. Debo's going down the left sideline, and Trey puts it over his backside shoulder, and somehow Emmanuel got in there and knocked it away.
He just timed it perfectly right. It was a great pass by Trey in terms of the location, right? Like down the sideline on his shoulder on the sideline side, that way to his hands. Right as it was hitting Debo's hands, Ambry came through with the swipe. Or not Ambry, but Mosley came through with the swipe on one of his hands. You come through with a hammer swipe.
DBs get credit.
Yes. A lot of times they take a lot of credit for shit they had nothing to do with. I give him credit there.
Oh,
that's Richard Sherman, man. If you ever wanted to be a GM and get out of Amazon, he's been all over that guy for years. Like that's
Emmanuel Mosley, yes.
Guy, I don't care. An undrafted free agent corner who starts on an elite defense, like that's I would say
might play a lot of press man.
That is not normal.
Right? Like part of the reason they didn't get to do the stuff they wanted to do last year defensively is because he wasn't around as much.
He got banged up, yeah.
One other Danny Gray note. I forgot about this. I don't know. I don't think we were standing together at the time. They were doing this drill where the receiver runs to the sideline and tries to drag his toe, keep both feet in bounds. And Danny Gray didn't get both feet down on a play where it shouldn't have been that difficult to get both feet down. He didn't drag his back foot. I thought he had enough time, easy for me to say, but I thought he had enough time just to get the foot down, but he didn't try to drag it, stepped out. There's a referee right there who's doing this. That's I would say disappointing. That's a transition for a college player where you only have to get 1 foot down to an NFL player. So that's just one. We're talking, a few times people have said this. You guys are nitpicking, Trey specifically, but we're talking about one play out of many snaps early in camp. But that is what we're observing. We're just telling you what we observed. And that was his shot in that drill to get 2 feet down, and he didn't do it. So
what do you think happens at practice with their coaches and the execs? You nitpick practice. Like, what the fuck? What do you think
don't worry, fellas. Not nitpickers.
They're doing
One thing
this
I learned from Saban. No nitpicking.
You think they're doing this for shits and giggles? Like, what's the point of all this, guys? We're just every day changes. Like, you should improve. You should get better.
Do the drill again.
I mean,
Friday.
Part of I'm pretty bullish on Danny Gray. He's playing this year. He is going to. I don't know if he's going to be a 30 catch guy. It might be 14, but he will get catches when the season ends.
Yeah,
he will score. Danny Gray will score a touchdown for the 49ers.